Hello, and welcome to Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Colloquiapedia, your new short, sharp weekly show in which we take a popular word or phrase from the contemporary zeitgeist and attempt to understand it in a little bit more layman's terms. Or, as I saw one journalist describe it the other day, a podcast that tackles buzzwords. And I think that's quite a good interpretation of what we want to do in terms of decoding, breaking down the boundaries of some of these words and phrases, and trying to arrive at a more shared collective understanding and interpretation thereof. I should say, actually, the term buzzword itself is defined by Oxford via Google as a word or phrase, often an item of jargon, that is fashionable at a particular time in a particular context. It then goes on to give a lovely little example. The latest buzzword in international travel is ecotourism. So that might be a good one for a future topic to talk about in a future episode. But nonetheless, today we are here to talk about the term acting. What does it mean? How is it interpreted today? How's that definition interpretation maybe grown up and changed over time? And we're going to be joined by a great guest, Melissa Johns, actor, actress. Never really sure exactly where the gentrification or not of the term these days really sits, but one who acts and does a very good job. She's previously on Coronation Street, is now on ITV's Grantchester. And Melissa, I think, will be able to talk about acting both from the point of view of an actor, seeing it as a profession and a discipline, but also just looking at things more broadly in terms of maybe how the terms changed and developed and been understood over time. But before we do that, I always think before we sit down with the expert, it's good sometimes just to jump online and read in black and white the simplistic term definition of how acting is described today. And that is defined by Oxford via Google as the art or occupation of performing fictional roles in plays, films, or television. And interestingly, also, of course, we have the kind of aside or additional interpretation of acting, which is temporarily doing the duties of another person, e.g., the acting supervisor. Wikipedia tells us that acting is an activity in which a story is told by means of its enactment by an actor who adopts a character, again in theatre, film, television, radio, and so on. The wiki actually also goes on to give us a little bit of an origin story about where acting is believed to have originated and derived from. Right in 2 centuries after the event, okay, Aristotle describes an event in which an ancient Greek performer called Thespis, an Athenian performer, was on stage with a chorus of people doing what we might, probably today consider more to be kind of traditional ancient Greek kind of performance poetry in the way that a bard might go round to perform the Iliad or the Odyssey. So it's very much like Dionysus said this, Dionysus did that. Well, on this particular day, for whatever reason, maybe he was moved by the muse or just the sheer, energy of being on stage and doing the performance. This guy Thespis is said to have broken out of that rigid mold and become and taken on the character. So instead of Dionysus said this, Dionysus did that. Suddenly it's, I am Dionysus. I said this. I did that. I made all of this wine. The people drank, and basically it was that kind of little maybe mutation in the art form that caused it to take on this whole new life. And of course, Thespis, for those who may already have guessed, this is believed where we got the term thespian from. Thespis, thespian, and thespian, another word for acting. So, all completely fascinating in terms of the origin of the word and the kind of specific and even more broad ways in which we interpret it in society today. But as always, that is enough of my introductory ramblings. So, let's jump straight in to the conversation that I had with Melissa.
So, Melissa, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you very much for joining us. And I think the best place to start would be to dive straight in. And if you could please give us your interpretation, definition, understanding of what the term acting actually means to you, and more broadly, to the zeitgeist in 2024.
So I've never been asked this question in my life, which is hilarious because it's the thing that kind of is my life. So always nice to be asked something you've never been asked before, eh? For me, I think that acting is the chance for me to take my lived experience, the life that I've lived, the life that I know, and take on a character that has been written by somebody usually with a different lived experience to me. I think we all have very different lived experience, so the chances of a writer having the exact same lived experience of me as me would be very, very strange. So me taking on that character and being able to draw on all of the experiences that I know about in life, the ones that feel relevant to the character, the ones that don't, and hopefully being able to bring something to light that maybe the writer, the director, the rest of the team hadn't quite thought about. I don't think it's as simple as here is your script, learn the lines and do as we say. I think that it's our job to be able to draw on the things that we know, the things we love, the things we hate, the things we like, the things we dislike, the things that we certainly don't know and never will know, and be able to bring those things to a character and hopefully allow an audience just to get from it what they need. So I think what I'll end up talking about a lot is lived experience. My lived experience taking on a role that was written by somebody with a different lived experience to be watched by somebody, again, with probably a different lived experience, and how all three of those dots can connect in whatever way they need to.
Absolutely. And so, with that said, when you go into a production, um, to what extent are you, if you to break it down, I don't know, in terms of a percentage or one side versus the other, to what extent are you just conscious of hitting the dots that you need to get to from A to B to Z to tell the story, being in, the exact sometimes millimeter position that the director wants you in, and so on, versus, as you say, bringing that, bringing your own perspective, bringing your own life, bringing your own interpretation maybe of a character? Are there different ways to approach maybe different roles? Or if you've got to get lots cut for multiple episodes of a series, does that change the game versus an individual project or something like that?
So I think when I first get a script, say if it's at the audition, when I first get the script come through for an audition, I will try to keep that as simple as possible. This is just me reading the lines that have been written and trying to find whatever truth in it I know. What do I know is real? So I'm reading these lines and I'm going, if this were me, Melissa Johns, because that's the only experience I have as a person, what do those words mean to me and how would I say them? Then I'll look at really specific notes that I know they want me to hit. Maybe they really want her to be a character that lights up the room when she comes in. Maybe she's a little bit sarcastic at times, can really hold her own, and isn't anyone's fool. There you go. So that's the kind of parameters I've been given. Once I've made sense of it myself, I'll then start to kind of funnel those things in. So hopefully I'm giving them a version that hits the beats they want to hit, but also uses why hopefully they've asked me to audition. Because if they wanted carbon copies of the audition to be exactly the same, they wouldn't ask like 20 people to audition. So the whole point is I want to hit the beats they've said, but I also want to be able to bring my own thing to it. Then if I get the role, on set, you're right, there is then the next layer. So, you know, I've maybe already kind of got into my skin what I want this character to be and what I want her to feel. And then is kind of the more technical side of it. Okay, so they specifically want me to come in carrying that bit of paperwork. They want me to deliver it on that desk, hang about there a little bit until I've heard my cue, and then come over and join that conversation, for example. And so keeping all of the things, all of the decisions I've made, keeping those alive, whilst also remembering to hit the physical beats that they've told me that I need to hit. And then I think the next layer on top of that is who's in the room with me. What's the energy that I've just walked into? Who are the characters that I'm with? Are they have I just walked into an angry situation? Have I just walked into a funny situation? Have I just walked into a situation where two people are quite clearly in love? So then adding into that how my character is going to react, not just to the words they say, but to the atmosphere that they've created. So I think for me, each step of the way, it's building on from that very first cold read that I do, where I think, how do I, Melissa Johns, make sense of this, to all of those layers on set. The difficulty is in an edit when they've had to cut bits in between, and so you don't always get to see those beats. I've definitely watched shows back before where I've thought, oh, I know I did a really good process there. I know that I started like this, and then I kind of allowed the character to grow into that little bit of the scene. But because they've had to cut it, it now looks like I made like a really quick, rash decision, when I know on the day I didn't. But do you know what? That's editing. I mean, it makes it in great.
Well, I suppose we're going a bit down the technical screen as opposed to stage rabbit hole here, but knowing the little bit that I've seen about it over the years, is there a dilemma always as well? If, for example, you know that you're going to have 5 takes of the same scene, 5 takes from 3 different angles, so you might do 15 takes in total. Do you sometimes have to deliberately pull back, especially the physical side, but even with your eyes and stuff, what you're doing, so that you're not doing something completely different every time, and you've maybe got those stock kind of movements or visible thought processes that you can keep going back to get that continuity? Or is it more the other way, actually, that because you know you've got 5 takes and you've got the different angles, you kind of try it slightly different?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, you know, I save the things that because it's about stamina, right? And so if I'm doing, I mean, if you take a scene where I did a drama called Life on BBC a few years ago, and my character has a huge panic attack before she's about to get married, and before she goes down the aisle, she has this huge panic attack. Now, I knew that they needed to capture that from quite a few different angles, and we were going to need to do that quite a few times. I'm not going to risk my own health massively. So if I throw myself into a full-on panic attack like 15 times over, that's not good for me, my mental health, or my body, actually, my body's response. So what I would do in a situation like that, and I don't know whether this is right or wrong, or if there even is a right or wrong, I would ask them, where possible, to do the kind of slightly wider shots first, if possible, just so that I could track the actual movement, just to be like, when you're not so close to my face, what space am I using? Am I pacing? Am I doing that? You know, just to kind of get it into my body without even thinking about what's going to be coming out of here. So that means that by the time we get to like the closer up shots, the movement is already in my body. So I'm not even thinking about that. Is all I need to think about for those last few takes that are going to be much closer up are, am I playing this as truthfully as I know how? And so, you know, I said this recently on TV, but you know, Meisner says that acting is the ability to act absolutely truthfully in imaginary circumstances, and I think that's something that I, where possible, always strive to do. I feel like I cannot do this unless I find my truth in it. Like, I have to just know it's not playing, it's not pretending to have a panic attack, it's what's my version of what that would feel like, and therefore how can I bring this to the character. But as I say, you wouldn't want to do that 15 times, so I would normally say, can I get the movement in my body first, and then when it's that closer up one, that's when I can kind of throw myself into the bit that you're going to feel on the screen, not the bit you're just going to see, because I think they're two slightly different things, aren't they? What we see is the movement, but when things are much closer up, that's what we, as an audience, that's when we hopefully start to feel something.
Yeah, and so that's a good platform to be able to jump off the technicalities more of screen acting, and maybe for people coming more outside the industry or just looking at the term and the discipline of acting more broadly. So if we think maybe even more in terms of stage or just performance in general, you mentioned Meisner there, and are there different ways of doing it? So if I'm a director or a casting director or a producer or whatever it may be, I hire an actor, but is it like they could be slightly different professions in a way? Like different people could be doing a slightly different job in a way. You know, there might be Meisner, there might be other techniques that people use. Some people, you know, I mean, I've referenced the Ian McKellen in Extras to you before about how he's like, Ian McKellen, you shall not fight. Like it's just basically pretending. I don't know. Okay, he doesn't do that really, but do you think there are different types of actor, as it were, and they are slightly different jobs almost in a way?
Yeah, I think the way that you take on a role is so different. I definitely know that there are people out there that will break down their script, you know, almost like word by word, just really look into every single word. And I think if that's for them, then that works. Like you do what allows you to do the best job, really. I'm kind of less about looking at each individual line and working out each individual intention. And as I said before, just finding seeing something on a page and going, where is and what is my truth in this? Less about each word and more about the feeling that I get from a collection of words being put together. But as I say, some people definitely break down word by word, line by line, looking at their objectives. So, you know, what are my objectives in this scene? What is it that I want from this? What does my character want from this scene? That's a huge one that I know so many people do. And to some extent, I've definitely done that in scenes before, because we have to know what our characters want from a scene, just like we would walk into a room ourselves and know why we'd gone in there in the first place. I think, I mean, I went to East 15, which is a drama school in East London, which is a very method acting school. It's Stanislavski. So we would kind of, I mean, people always, some people get a bit funny about method acting. You know, they're like, oh, it's acting. You know, if you're playing a monster, you shouldn't.
I think if it's, I mean, you can expand on this further, but to be honest, I think in a weird way, sometimes the basic stripped back version of method acting can almost be a little bit of a backup tool sometimes, where you reach into a bag, say there's just a commercial or something like that, and you suddenly like, you know, oh, I've got to think, I really enjoy Big Macs or whatever it is, but I need to be hiding the fact that I really, you know. So I think there are some simple basic tools, but you say that there's a wider way you can expand that and sort of intermingle it with more sort of raw kind of interpretations of roles.
I think so. I've never been one for like sticking to, when it comes to acting in everyday life, I love to stick to rules and they help me and I live by rules. And that's the person that I am. I don't normally break them very often. But when it comes to acting, I got so caught up when I was younger in looking around and seeing how everyone else was doing it at drama school that ended up taking over. You know, people would start saying, oh, you know, these warm-ups they would do, and then they do this method and then they do that method, and they'd be like, well, I did 5 hours of preparation for today. And I think, oh gosh, I think I only probably did about an hour. And then I'd start panicking that I wasn't doing it right. And over the years, I've just realized that really that's just crap. actually, and it doesn't really matter how I do it or the person next to me does it. It's how you feel you can carry a scene, and also mixing things together. So you know, if there's one that we learned at drama school where, you know, the minute that you kind of pick up a script, you go through the script and you highlight all the things your character says about themselves. So for example, the line might be, the character walks in and goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm late, I'm always late." So I would highlight, okay, what does this character say about herself? She says she's always late. And you would go through the script and do that. And then you do it for all the other characters. What do the other characters say about you? That could be flipped on its head, and it might be that this character enters and the person, that their mum goes, "Oh, here she is, late, always late." Okay, so another character says, "I'm always late." So you know, that's all of these things. They're just little tools that you can have, and you don't have to do them for everything, or you could do them for every role but not do them for every scene. I just think that for me, I feel confident enough now to kind of go, at the heart of this, I just have to be able to give truth, because that's the type of performance I love giving. If it's a kind of, especially with kind of more naturalistic acting styles, but even with things like really kind of big character driven things, comedy characters, characters that are slightly verging on kind of caricature, they have to have truth at the heart of them, otherwise we won't find them funny. Clowning, for instance, one of the most beautiful things about clowning is that it's so real. The idea that a clown can be both full of comedy and tragedy together is so true, but that has to come from so much truth. So I think there is something to be said about people often thinking that maybe the more kind of character driven big caricature parts are more about pretending, and I don't think that's further from the truth, actually. I think those ones have to be even more embedded in truth than you ever imagined.
On that note, I had a final sort of conceptual level question, which is probably to get off and on to more pragmacies. But in that respect, do you think there is a difference between an actor and a performer? I know that acting is part of performance, but I'm thinking, for example, but two different ends of the spectrum, right? On the one hand, maybe you've got a presenter who needs to know about, you know, screen techniques and how to connect with an audience, even down to what to do with their eyes, where to stand and convey different emotions sometimes. On the other hand, you've got your musical theatre type acting, which is more, it can be very performative, you know, like big mainstream productions like a Les Mis, where you're singing, dancing and acting all at the same time. You might be playing out even to the O2, you know, really just having to project almost like it was a concert. Is that acting discipline in the middle, is that different from more performative roles where you're almost trying to get through the performance, or are you kind of indicating that you sort of need a bit of both in a way? Maybe you need to build so that you can then just release and then kind of show the truth within it, if any of that makes sense, please.
No, absolutely. I think that an actor can be a performer and a performer can be an actor, but I don't necessarily think you're doing those two things at the same time. I think that for me, and again, this is just my way of thinking of it, is a performer is somebody that is going up and offering a performance. That could be a comedian, a dancer, a singer, a musician, a presenter, a host, someone that is going up there in order to give a performance that is received by an audience, and that could be in lots of different kind of art forms. I also think a performer can be an actor. In terms of acting, I think as an actor, I don't think I go on to perform as much. I always remember at drama school doing this thing where when we were really kind of early days, first year at drama school, we would go on to do a monologue and we'd kind of like have a moment to ourselves, and then we'd like naturally like look up and like get ready to do it. And as a method acting school, we were kind of told, like, what are you doing? Because what that means is you're like switching on a character just like that. And actually, if the character comes from within and is truthful, you would have kind of started to have become that character from the moment you walk through the door, not necessarily gone, I'm Melissa, and now I'm performing. So I think whilst both can be both, I think that acting, there is something very different about acting, that in order to do it in a way that I personally prefer, which is a very sort of truthful, finding my own truth in it, I sway less, I sway further away from the idea of performing. But when I host events, I think I'm definitely performing. If I'm going on to host, I've done sort of award ceremonies and things like that. That for me is me kind of performing. Or if I'm hosting our disability disabled artist networking events, that feels like more of a performance, because I'm having to be like a produced version of myself, that I know will have boundaries and will be received in a way I need it to be received. Whereas acting, I don't really have to care too much about the way it's received, looking or feeling beautiful or together. Actually, acting can just be however it's meant to come out in the moment. So I think that's the difference.
Do you enjoy that, by the way, the performance and the presenting side?
I love it. I absolutely love it, because it's so different. It's so different. You know, me going onto a TV set and putting a character, allowing a character that I've kind of been working on, and picking that character up and putting them into a situation and allowing that situation to play out. There's a sort of freedom in that is very different to the freedom that I get when I'm on stage and I'm guiding people through a night. That's my chance to go. It's almost kind of a lot more scary, because you kind of get things run through your head where you're like, oh, that'd be really funny if I say that now. But if I do say that now, am I going to get into trouble? Yeah, but if I don't, it's going to be really, but it would have been funny if I did. But you have to make those decisions so quickly. You're like, whereas with acting, I may have thought, I would have done a bit more of a thought process. When it's a performing type thing, or as I say, if I'm hosting an event or presenting an event, I don't have time to think. I'm just like, hello, you're all in front of me. I'm about to say something. I'm hoping that you're going to find it funny and not offensive. But I have had that run through my head 20 times in the last 30 seconds, which I don't get with acting.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were laughing at that bit. I feel like you know what it's like to be stood up there going, oh, shall I say that?
I just think it's just struck me increasingly in recent months and years how different it is. And you were saying earlier a bit about how over the years you'd learned to relax with the acting a little bit more. Not relax, but you'd sort of grown into your own skin, in the sense that, you know, you knew what you wanted to do with certain characters or certain scenes, certain projects. You knew what you wanted to bring. I almost got a bit brought back from like presenting kind of side, in that, especially, you know, if you just talk about commercial or a bit of comedy or something like that, where there's this wonderful thing where you can start to relax a little bit and bring that bit of yourself and your own personality to it. So I love those crossover projects sometimes, in a way where, you know, and again, not being sort of like a well-trained actor or really any good at it. So for me, sometimes it's easier to do that projection, but I do quite like that crossover a bit sometimes, really. Yeah,
Feels good.
it does. Now, I wanted to ask, we're thinking about words within the cultural zeitgeist and how we interpret them today. I'm going to postulate a theory to you here, and you can tell me, you know, you can tell me how crazy I am.
I hope it's not on the word postulate, because I've never even heard of that word. You've introduced so many words to me already in this session.
See, this is what we like. This is, sign up to subscribe to the Colloquiapedia podcast, guys, because this is, you're all going to learn words. I'm just checking though that this is actually the right word. Suggest or assume the existence, fact, or truth as a basis for reasoning, discussion, or yeah, I suppose That's about what I'm going to do. So my thinking basically is, I think that over the last 10, 20 years, with the advent of social media and kind of influencers and people who are celebrities for celebrity's sake, celebrities within their own right, reality TV stars, and so on and so forth, I would put it to you that acting and actors and the craft and the discipline is actually revered more in society now than it may have been, 20, 30 years ago, because we've almost separated out now the discipline and the act and the craft from the fame and the notoriety and the celebrity that goes with it. So do you think there's been maybe a shift over the years, because so many people get so famous doing so many other things anyway now, that people maybe respect the discipline and the amount of work that has to go into it a little bit more? Not that they didn't always in the past. I'm sure Patrick Stewart on the Treading the Boards at the RSC always got the acclaim that he deserved. But you see what I mean? I think people understand that it is its own little thing, its own standalone thing within its own right, and it's not necessarily just attached sometimes to all the ribbons that go with it.
Absolutely. I'm really glad that you asked this question. When I work with uh sometimes young people, so teenagers that are maybe getting ready to go to drama school, or maybe they've just done their A levels, or maybe they've done their GCSEs and they're going to college. And when they say, I think I want to be an actor, the first thing I ask, and I don't think this would have been a question that would have been asked years ago, but I think it's a question that has to be asked now. I will always ask, do you want to be an actor or do you want to be a celebrity? Because they are two very different things. Which one is it that you want to be, and what do you want to get from it? If you want to be an actor, there you will have to learn your craft. You will have to read scripts and put yourself into situations and draw upon your lived experience, and kind of at times feel like you're kind of bearing all in terms of your vulnerability, and giving that to something. If you want to be a celebrity, I think you have to be very, very good at putting a bit of a mask on, and performing. If you want to be a celebrity by way of, I don't mean an actor that has celebrity status from being an actor. I mean somebody
An
who
influence.
is yeah, maybe influencers, or a TV personality, or a reality TV star. I think that in order to uh, become a celebrity and be successful, whatever success looks like in terms of those jobs, you have to be a version of yourself that I don't actually think you could be every single day. You have to be a very produced version of yourself that people want to see. And I don't think you can be like it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because I think it would be
Scary,
exhausting.
isn't it? Yeah. That
I
is
think you have to be a version of yourself that producers are going to want to see. They're gonna go. You're the type of person that if it was on Gogglebox, they'd choose that scene with you in, because you were so. There was something about you that was so bubbly and lit up the screen, but it's based in the reality of who you are. So I think that when it comes to celebrity status from something like being influencers or reality stars or TV personalities, I think you are performing, but you have to perform a version of yourself. So I think there's truth in it. I don't think anyone's faking it. I think it's absolutely a version of someone, but it's a version of someone that has to be seen in a different light that I don't think you can be every single hour of every single day. Whereas if you want to be an actor, you will you will be yourself every single day, and you will take on roles that are different to who you are, but the two will kind of gel together in a slightly more organic way that feels a bit more maintainable for me. I would find that more maintainable.
I'd really never considered it in such scary terms before, but that more kind of performance, reality, influencer side, it's almost a bit like sort of childlike in kind of craving attention. No, not that I'm dissing any of that, of course, but you've almost got to kind of read the room, as it were, in terms of what people want from you, and then almost, like I say, childlike, like enact that.
Because you're not taking on anyone else's work, right? So as an actor, I'm working together with a team of people. I'm working together with a writer that has written a character that's part of a story, that's part of, and I'm coming in as part of that to offer my very niche, very unique stance on what I think that is. And you may not want that, and therefore I may not be right for it. But that's what I'm offering. Whereas I think from a performer point of view and a kind of celebrity point of view, and again, I'm using celebrity not for actors that have found fame and celebrity status from being actors, but maybe celebrities in a different way. There is no story. You are the story. You are offering up your real, actual life. You are offering up your real, actual home, and so therefore you do kind of, I guess, have to just stand out so much from the crowd, because not everybody can just make a living out of just being them, right? Like, fair play to the people that are able to do it. You know, I see on Instagram all the time, like, influencers that, you know, I know they're making incredible money and they've got people following them, and it's because they are offering up a part of them that they're prepared to go, this is me, but it's a version of me that I really want you all to see. And that isn't part of someone's story. That's not what someone wrote for you. That is you going, what I have to offer you is my life in front of you now, told through a way that I'm gonna kind of orchestrate. So yeah, absolutely. I suppose there is in not in an undermining way at all, but there is a childlike thing to it, in the sense that as children, if we wanted attention, we would become bigger. We would become bigger versions of ourselves, or we would get angry, or we would do something, but whatever it was, we'd become slightly larger versions of ourselves. And I think that in order to kind of succeed as a TV personality, or you know, a reality star, to some extent you have to do that. You have to work out what people love about your personality and make that as big as possible.
Yeah, and I also just think it's incredibly liberating, as we've spoken about, you know, in terms of once you get it, in terms of not necessarily the discipline or the craft. You know, there are too many years in the world that everyone would have to study to know everything about it. But when you get what you feel that you can bring to the table in that respect, and this is why I think I mentioned to you before as well, in terms of thinking about the word, it's interesting that acting means what we're talking about today, the craft of acting, but it also means that acting, it can be like acting CEO or acting manager of Everton Football Club. And that type of acting, in a way, is kind of like a bit scary. It's a bit imposter syndrome in that it's like, well, I'm here for a bit. I'm overseeing the ship. Whereas the acting discipline we've been talking about, you always got to get rid of all of that at the door, and whatever the positives or the negatives that are thrown at you over the course of a career, you know, you're gonna, even the most successful actors in the world are gonna go to auditions and not get it. You've just got to have that confidence and belief in what you're doing, and you're not acting in the terms of like, I'm only going to do this for a bit, it's an interim thing. So this is a real thing, this is a real discipline, and there are ways of doing it that I can bring that will improve a production.
Yeah, I think there's big crossovers between acting as a profession and then things like, oh, I'm acting head teacher. We hear that all the time. As you say, acting CEO, acting head coach, acting manager. And I think what both of the things involve are you just having to believe in yourself, even if you don't really. Because actually, for both of those things, if you don't believe in yourself, then how's anybody else going to? And they're both roles that, you know, as an actor, I have to believe in myself. Otherwise, why is an exec producer going to believe in me? Why is a casting director going to ask to bring me in for something? They're not. Just like if I was acting CEO of a company, if I don't think I'm that good, the rest of my team aren't going to think I'm going to, that I am very good. So I think that both of those things require you to have self-belief, even if that self-belief is so little. You have to that's where you have to bring in your larger than life side of it and go, sort of fake it till you make it a little bit, even if when you go home that night you go, oh god, I don't know if I did do that well today. That's okay, that's absolutely fine. We're not going to be our best every day, but you certainly have to believe that tomorrow you're going to go back and you're going to absolutely smash it.
And that was a wonderfully articulate and eloquent joining up of those two slightly different interpretations of the same word, by the way. Yeah, I never really looked at it like that, but there's the connection, the similarity in that respect. Stepping into those shoes and having those beliefs and fake it till you make it. Absolutely. Great. It's a great bit of advice for the youth in any form of life. And that brings me on to, and finally, if you were to give the youth advice, as we have done already a little bit, but not maybe in terms of, getting to tread the boards at the RSC or being famous on the Insta, but of how to become a good actor within their own right and in terms of the product and the service that they're bringing as an individual to the industry. Thinking maybe a little bit as well about your own journey of getting into it and how you got through it and the way to where you are now. What are some of just the key little bits of advice for those who might be looking at getting into acting or just even getting better at it?
I think there's a couple of things here. One of them is to not put all of your happiness in thinking that you will only ever be happy when you're on a TV set or when you're on a stage. If you want to be an actor and you think that that is happiness, you wouldn't be happy very much of the time, because the time that you actually spend as an actor on a TV set or on stage isn't always that much in comparison to all the other things you do. So you really do have to make sure you're finding all the things that light your fire. Someone once said to me that being an actor is a bit like a DJ board. The what's it called? Slider. Slides up and down, where you sort of like change the volume or change the bass or whatever. And so being an actor or being a creative is sort of like that, in the sense that I know in my life, sometimes my work as a workshop leader, so maybe teaching drama workshops, has had to go right the way to the top because I have bills to pay. And maybe for a couple of weeks, I wasn't doing what I thought when I was younger was being an actor. But both of those things are being an actor. And I made sure that I found joy in both of them. So it's about finding joy in lots more things that you do that isn't just being on stage or being on a film set. Work out all the things that you've got. What do you have in your basket that is your thing that you can offer this world, and look at how you can also kind of turn that into jobs, into things that can make you money, because that way you can pay your rent and not feel like you're kind of doing anything that's making you really unhappy. In saying that, have life experience and take on all the jobs, because I've had so many different jobs. I've worked in elderly care homes. I've worked with children and young people with disabilities. I've worked in a sports shop. I've been an ice cream lady, which was ridiculous, because I remember desperately wanting at 16 this job as an ice cream lady, and forgetting that when you've only got one arm, it's actually really hard to hold a cone and put scoops of ice cream on it. But it never crossed my mind until the first day I was there. Anyway, I found a way of doing it. Solution focused, you've got to be. Take on all the.
I was laughing before Melissa made that joke, by the way. So don't cancel me or anything. Like laughing at a disability or ability joke.
Well, you'd be allowed in that moment, because I was laughing at my face. I was laughing at myself in that moment. But it was, and I just think that all of those jobs, the people that I've met along the way, allow me to take on characters in a certain way. When a job comes through now, I can almost like really quickly, I'll see this character breakdown, I'll look at it, and I'll be able to like sift through a library of people that I've worked with in the care home, or people that used to come into the ice cream parlor, and I'll try and think about all those people that I've met, so that I can find my truth of that character. Where have I seen this character before? Who is she? Where have I met her? What was she doing? What did she like? What did she hate? Who was she with? And sort of pick that out from the things that I've done and seen in my life. So I just think acting is a lot of things. Acting is never just being on a TV set or a film set or on stage. Acting is a million and one things, beautiful, amazing things that make up this career. Sometimes really hard things, sometimes taking on jobs you don't really want that much, because you have to pay the rent or the mortgage in order to take on the other jobs. For ages, I did supply teaching because supply teaching meant that I could just ring up at 7 o'clock in the morning and say, hi, I'm free to work today. And then they would put me in a school. But if I had acting, if I had a filming job the week after, then I wouldn't have to ring up at all. So yes, on some of those days, it was a little bit tricky and I didn't always like going into schools to teach. But what it was doing was it was freeing me up to be able to continue doing the thing that I love the most. And slowly, through over the years, I was able to balance that out more. So I'd say earlier on in my career, I was doing a lot more of the jobs that didn't necessarily make me happy, and then I was getting little acting jobs that were sort of, topping it up. I'd say 90% of it was all the work I was doing, and I was getting about 10% back. 10% in terms of being on stage or being on a TV set. And just slowly over the years, I'm 34 this year. It's only now probably 13 years after graduating that I'm probably kind of going, actually, this is a really lovely balance that I'm really happy with now, actually. And the jobs that I'm doing, I really enjoy. So I think another thing someone said to me once was, it takes about 10 years to become an actor. And I never really understood what they meant by that. I thought, I really don't get what you mean. And actually, I started at 19 at drama school, and I'd say that it was probably when I hit 28, 29 that I started to go, okay, I'm building a CV, I'm making really good contacts, I'm earning money that's allowing me to live my life exactly how I want to live my life. And that is through me being an actor. And so actually, for me to get to that point, it really did take 10 years. And so in those 10 years, don't be unhappy, find all the things that make you happy. There's no point in putting all your eggs in one basket.
Absolutely. And I'd even go so far as to add to that. Not to go so far as to be so pretentious as to say, see everything in life as a role, everything you do. But there is a little bit of collateral beauty, I think, in that, because you're in this career and you go off and do other things, whether, it begins by being by necessity, you go and do these other things, you end up realizing like the privilege of being able to go and do other stuff with other people, and just work across a multitude of different industries and sectors and roles. Like that ends up, doesn't it, I think, being one of the things you get back is like you set out to depict life experience, but in a weird way you get it because part of the way you study it is to go out into the world and do all of this stuff, and you get to see so much more than you would have done probably if you hadn't have taken that route.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, having a job that was where I knew I'd be going to the same place every day, and doing the same hours every day, I just never wanted that. I'd seen my parents do it, and I just Sunday night anxiety. I see so many people that I know have got a bit of Sunday night anxiety, and I was just so scared that I would. I just desperately didn't want to just be in one place. That's not to undermine. For some people, that is literally the dream, to kind of know that this is where you are going. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely days when this industry takes me like all over the country, and I'm like getting on a train at this time, and then I'm staying in that place, and then I'm here, and then I'm sort of like, oh, I don't even know what city I'm in at the moment. And there are definitely days when I message some of my best mates and I'm like, oh, there has to have been a better job I could have chosen. There's got to have been something that had a bit more structure and a bit more security. But I know if I'd have had that, I wouldn't have been a happy person. So there is a real beauty if you're the type of personality that enjoys kind of a different routine every so often, and different locations and meeting different people. If that sounds like something you really enjoy, then absolutely being an actor is allows you to achieve that.
Absolutely. And we just like to caveat, kids, do still take STEM subjects seriously, because even if you're doing a creative endeavor, Melissa just mentioned there the trains. You still got to be able to work out the train time, how long it's going to take you to get there. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and just think because you're going down this creative route that you might go into, you're not taking the maths seriously as well. It's very important. Melissa,
and you've got to do taxes, so you know.
And say again.
And you've got to do your taxes. So
well, you've really got, even if you might find, I haven't through personal experience, obviously, but you might find even if you have got an accountant, you end up having to do a lot of that stuff yourself anyway. So, yeah, do learn those skills, please, kids. And yeah, I'm conscious of time, so I want to say thank you very much for that, Melissa. I think I say this every week, but that was undoubtedly the best word and discussion that we've had yet. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be the best one this week.
And do tune in again next week, guys, for the best one next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.